All right, good evening. Today is November 21st, 2023. This is our city council meeting, and I call this meeting to order. The next item is roll call.
Councilman Becker,
Here.
Councilman Jago,
Here.
Councilman Lesko Hair,
Here.
President Pro Tem Schultz.
Here.
Excused absence is President Johnson.
All right, next item is public hearings. Tonight we have none. Item number 4, public comment. The city council will receive comments from city residents. Comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per individual. Anyone wishing to speak is required to sign up in advance or state the following items for the record when called upon: their name, address, subject matter, and contact information. No action will be taken on any public comments unless the item is also elsewhere on the agenda. Tonight, as we are also presenting via Zoom, if anyone on the Zoom wishes to speak during the public comment period, please raise your virtual hand through Zoom, as the chat box is not monitored during the meeting, and those on the call must remain muted if not recognized to speak. In person tonight, we have 4 currently signed up. The first is Mary Kay Weston.
Good evening, Mary Kay Weston, 1003 Madison Avenue, a resident of Fort Atkinson. This past summer, I was fortunate to be part of the 2023 Fort Atkinson Local Government Academy. This academy included discussion and education into the operating parts of the city. It also promoted transparency on how our government is to be run in its operations and its oversights. The city also recognized how important the public support and involvement was to a thriving community. I came away with confidence and pride that my community was making such efforts. For those of you that don't know, I am very pro-business. I look forward to the city growing in this area with thoughtful emphasis on neighborhood and safety. So it came as a big surprise last week when we learned that there would be a plan commission meeting, but we found out only one day, and we were not told, we were not notified, none of our neighbors were notified of this meeting to discuss a planned improvement next door. But Pete and I, my husband is Pete Weston with the Design Alliance. We took online, we reviewed the documents, and Pete went to the meeting. We were further surprised in that there was no public comment at such a meeting. Pete has done over 2,000 projects in and around this community and throughout the state. He has attended many plan commission meetings, and nowhere was he ever denied to speak. He has always been allowed public comment on any of his projects on that. At the meeting, there was only one plan commissioner present. The rest were all on Zoom, which is in today's neighborhood just fine. But the camera was not oriented to any people in the public. So there was no way for the plan commission members to even know if anyone from the general public had shown up or cared about the meeting. After the meeting, Pete was told there is no statutory requirement for allowing public comment at a plan commission meeting. Maybe we should change that. Also in reviewing, there are no phone numbers or emails posted on the website indicating the plan commissioners to have any dialogue. He'd also tried to call the city phone number all morning yesterday, and it was always busy. I think we need to give transparency in our government more than just lip service. Thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Thank you. Next up, we have Tony Gulig.
Hello, Tony Gulig, 106 South Sixth Street, Fort Atkinson. Also Jefferson County Board of Supervisors, District 28 here in Fort Atkinson. I'm speaking also to the issues concerning the proposed development and the Plan Commission's review. Last week's Plan Commission site plan review meeting focused nearly entirely on the approval of this project's certified survey map and the site plan. The meeting soon eroded to a near tunnel vision perspective about access easement and the agreement across the property to Clouth's business. This is worthy of discussion for sure, but there was no discussion among the Plan Commission members about the building's aesthetics, none at all. Some of the elected Plan Commission members apparently didn't even know they were voting to approve more than just the CSM and the site plan. Perhaps more than a few of them didn't know what they were voting to approve. During the meeting, the proposed building developer made a presentation that included visual examples of the building that had similar materials to those presented for this building. These examples focused on buildings in strip areas or seas of asphalt, not in mixed use areas. The West End strip retail area of Fort Atkinson has 4 lanes of traffic, and the average distance from the face of the buildings on one side of the street to the face of buildings on the other is nearly 400 feet. This is typical and proper for this type of area. The mixed-use neighborhood this proposed building is going into only has 2 lanes of traffic and only about 170 feet between the buildings on each side of the road. The scale is smaller, the buildings are more finely detailed, yet the proposed building looks to be more plain than even any in the West End strip retail area in Fort Atkinson. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Pete Weston.
Hi, Pete Weston again, an adjacent neighbor right to the east. My wife, Mary Kay, and I have run our architecture business in town for the last 30+ years. Much of my firm's business
sorry,
is about
Pete, I'm
fixing
sorry.
buildings.
Mr. Weston?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just need you to state your address.
Oh, I had it on form. 1003 Madison
Thank you.
Avenue.
I did see that. You have to
That's
say it.
fine.
I'm sorry.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Go ahead.
Anyway, much of our firm's business is about making buildings prettier, making them softer, more approvable for plan commissions, more valuable to developers when they move a building changes hands from one to another. This building is a pure unadulterated box with it seemingly some articulation on the front of it. I'm not sure exactly the documents that had been presented to the Plan Commission were solely the facades. They didn't show the footprint and other things. Our area of the neighborhood, the West End, the zoning allows this, and we want this. You know, we want more attention paid. Our side of the hill, you know, as we come into town from the West End, the road gets narrower, we cross the hill, we go around the bend at McCoy Park, and things are detailed differently. The roofs are pitched, the buildings are more finely articulated, it's a pedestrian area. It's a very mixed use area, had been residential and more a little bit of commercial stuff has come in. This building is a 4-sided box that doesn't even meet the aesthetic standards of the buildings that are further west. Again, we don't know everything because we only have the little renderings that were produced for the Plan Commission submittal. Even out at the west side, every single box shaped building, every single one, I went out and audited to be care, has at least a horizontal parapet along its sidewalls and some physical articulation in the vertical elements, whether those are little fake columns or whatever, down the sidewalls and presents the whole building. This building has a cubist front box, and then the roof just pitches away for a zillion feet. And the sidewalls, after that little box in the front, look to me to just be dead flat with some 2-dimensional painted on materials changes, which I'm appreciative of. And of course, I'm looking forward to my own things. I don't want to reduce my property value as a neighbor next door, but as a community citizen, This thing is as inexpensive a box as we could possibly put in place there. After last week's Plan Commission meeting, I was told that the submittal met all the required criteria, and there was nothing the Plan Commission could do. I don't know what the point of the Plan Commission would be at that point. I ask as both a neighbor protecting my own property value and as a community citizen, at a minimum, we should look at the aesthetics of this particular building a teeny bit, articulate the side, make it at least meet the criteria that was met by all the other buildings on the west side. And again, I appreciate your time. And I don't know what to do about this.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, we have Dean Trost.
Eden Trost, 1315 Montclair Place, Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. I'm here today to address you guys and thanking the board for passing a ordinance to pass UTVs and ATVs on city Fort Atkinson city streets. I already got a guy named Eric Foster. He's actually planning on opening a small business in town here, so you'll be hearing from him pretty soon too. A little ATV shop with parts and stuff like that. He plans on going somewhere on Main Street. The other thing is, I know on the approach the board, and we're holding a meat raffle at the bowling alley on the 2nd of December. And I would invite all you guys to come and join and see what our club is about. Fort Atkinson, crushing on cruisers. So if you could be there, you're invited for sure. Again, I would like and we're raising money to pay for the signs. So I'd like to push it, like Rebecca. I want to see what you have in mind. How can we get together? When can we get together to verbalize what we need to do for paying you for signs and see what's going on with that. And then on the 3rd of December, we have a parade going on. Okay, I noticed that I was going to try to approach Officer Bump too in this coordination. But on that day, I would like to ask for permission to get our machines and trailers to the site as being the roads of Fort Atkinson, and of course back to our homestead. And like places, we all don't live too far, but the thing is, to get them to there and back, and getting what we need to do that, okay, on that night, because we're gonna have to go on the other side of town, and like my residence is right up the street from there, so it really doesn't pay to go all the way back on the other side of town and go on my side of town just when I'm just up the street. So stuff like that, most people are, and there's a lot of people that would like to do either that, or maybe even have a police escort from on that day, from my house residence to where we stage and everything else to start the parade, and then go from there and maybe back. So I like to approach you with that and see what we can do to work on that day. Just a couple hours of so we can get because we're going to have a lot of machines. Plan on having at least 15 machines or so, and trailers, floats, and doing good stuff, passing out candy and donations and stuff like that of that day too, because we're seeing what we can do to raise money. So I appreciate the time, and I just look forward to getting together with Rebecca and asking her about signs and stuff like that. And then Officer Bump, maybe if I need to address Officer Bump, you need to let me know. I guess I can address him too on that day.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This is our first call for anyone on Zoom who would like to speak. The second call for anyone on Zoom who'd like to make a public comment. And final call for anyone on Zoom who'd like to make a public comment. Since there's no further public comments, item number 5 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda outlined in this council packet is hereby presented for action by the city council. Items may be removed from the consent agenda on the request of any one council member. Items not removed may be adopted by one action without debate. Removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the council president.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6, petitions, requests, and communications. First item under this is a presentation from Trilogy Consulting LLC relating to the city's stormwater utility, water utility, and wastewater utility. Engineer Selly?
Thank you. I'm going to try to multitask and talk while I get these guys ready for a presentation, but council will remember the approval of this. Maybe a couple of months ago, we hired Trilogy. They have been engaged here in Fort Atkinson, starting with the water rate case that we successfully navigated back in 2019, along with, I couldn't do it, could I? Along with the a look at our sanitary sewer rate situation.
I already allowed them to share.
Oh, you
Andy,
did?
So they can
How do I
share.
get the share to stop?
X at the top corner there.
Oh, good gosh, I can't see it. There we go. Okay. All right. Epic fail on multitasking, huh? So anyway, these guys have been engaged here with us looking at wastewater rates and the water rate case. We asked them to come back and take another look at our utilities. And as you've seen, as we've talked about in the budget, a couple of our utilities, the wastewater utility and the stormwater utility, are going to see some increases coming up in 2024. And Christy and Eric from Trilogy have kind of done the analysis and are going to give us a little bit of a report on these 3 utilities and what they're forecasting into the future and where we're at currently. So with that, I think you guys can share your screen now, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I'll try.
Perfect. Yeah, we can see that, Eric.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the intro. I'm going to be talking about the stormwater utility and the water utility, and then I'll turn it over to Christy to wrap up with the wastewater. So we'll just dive right in and try and keep this brief. First, the stormwater utility. Just to give a brief history, it was first implemented in 2009. Rates at that time were $27 per ERU or single family home per year. And those were gradually increased over the next 10 years to the present rate of $52.50 per year. In 2020, there has been no increase since that time. For the most part, rates have been adequate to cover all the stormwater utility obligations, its O&M expenses, and routine capital needs. However, over the past several years, costs have risen. There's some additional obligations that the utility is required to do, and we have seen the utility need to dip into its reserves a little bit. So then we're looking at some recommended increase for next year, and then some additional projected rate increases kind of phased in over the next 5 years, although those will be reevaluated annually to make sure that we're still on track. The increases are really needed to, like I said, just ongoing maintenance, capital needs. Costs have risen over the past several years. The utility will be responsible for some additional debt service, particularly for the new public works facility. And then there are some long-term capital projects that are the TMDL projects that are mandated by the state. Although there's no timeline on that, we are beginning to plan for that. So as I said, the recommended increase for 2024 is 25%, or about $13 per year. The projected increases after that kind of gradually come down, 20% in 2025, 15 in 26, 10% in 2027, and 5% in 2028. We might be looking at some additional kind of inflationary 3% or so annual increases, but again, that'll be reevaluated once we get further out into the future. Just to show you what I'm talking about here with our cash flow, this first year is the end of year 2021. And at that time, this red line represents the amount of reserves that the utility has. At that time, it was about 600,000. Between 2022 and what we're looking at for this year, we're projecting that balance to be less than $200,000 at the end of this year. And then a slight decrease for 2024, even with the 25% increase. So we're really just trying to prevent the utility from going negative short term. And then we are recommending that the utility maintain a minimum reserve level of about $400,000 just to ensure that it meets all its annual obligations. So these future projected rate increases will be to build back that reserve up to the minimum level. And then after a few years, we are looking at being able to start to plan on those long-term TMDL projects. There was $3 to $5 million in capital needs identified back in 2018. There is possibly some flexibility in those. So again, those will be reevaluated in the future, but it's looking like, no money will be really available for those projects for another 5 years or so. And just to give you some context of the rates in comparison to your regional peers, these are all the other communities in the Rock River Basin and what they charge for stormwater on an annual basis on an ERU basis or for each single family home. So you can see this first yellow bar is the current Fort Atkinson rate. So it's quite a bit below the average or median for the area. Even with the first 25% increase, it will remain well below the median. With these projected increases, we're probably looking, it'll remain kind of in the middle of the pack. It's likely that many of these other communities will also be seeing some rate increases as they're in the same boat with the future mandates. So. Just moving on to the water utility then. This is more of a status update. There's no rate increase at this time. But just to give you a brief refresher, as Annie mentioned, the last rate case was finally implemented in October of 2021. It was about a little more than a year long review and approval process with the Public Service Commission, plus additional planning ahead of that. But the main goal was to fund the main replacement program to give the utility ability to replace 1% of its mains per year. So with that approval in 2021, the utility was able to begin doing that in 2022 and 2023 and is on track to maintain that program going forward. The one thing that we have seen is that the cost for the hydrants and services that are also replaced at the same time as the mains, those costs have risen much faster than anticipated. And they are not funded using that same program that was approved. It's coming out of your standard water rates. So because of that, we are recommending that the utility should seek to implement a rate increases through the simplified rate case process through PSC if they're eligible in the next 3 years. We won't know what the eligibility is until early May of each year. And we don't know what the percent increase that will be yet. It will likely be between 3 and 8%. It was 8% this year. The PSC sets that every year based on market conditions around early February. The utility was not eligible this year to get one. We think it may be eligible in 2024, but if it is, we would recommend seeking that out. And just to kind of hypothetical again, we don't know the precise percentage increase that could be, but this shows what kind of that cash flow if the utility were able to get just a 3% increase in 2024, 2025, and 2026. And what this is showing is that there will be some negative cash flow dipping into reserves over the next few years because of those rising costs. But if the utility is able to implement these small rate increases, then that will reverse and will keep the utility in good financial health going forward and maintaining that track. And like I said, we won't know for sure what that eligibility is until May. And there's about a 6 to 8 week review and approval process for the PSC. So those wouldn't be implemented until June or July. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christy to go through the wastewater.
All right, thank you. Similar to the water utility, the last rate study was completed in 2020. And at that point, we were looking at a series of kind of moderate rate increases to cover your $14 million upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant. That study also recommended that you would likely to need some more inflationary 3% per year increases after for 2024 and following years, just to maintain reserves and be able to continue funding routine capital out of current revenues rather than borrowing. So we updated all those projections and are recommending that you continue on with that plan of kind of those moderate annual rate increases based on our updated revenues and expenses. So we're recommending 3% for 2024 and probably a 3 to 4% annual increase each year coming up. Again, with the recommendation to continue to evaluate that on a regular basis. So that increase for 2024 would amount to about $9.12 for the whole year for your typical residential customer. And then if you're looking at 3 to 4% rate increases in future years, again, that's in that like $9 to $10 per year range of impact. So it's not a big dollar amount. And just with some additional capital costs in your CIP, like the solar energy project and the wastewater utilities share of the public works facility, you are projected to draw down reserves a little bit over the next few years. If you could advance to the next slide, I'll show you what that looks like. So as you can see here, that the red line represents where your actual and projected reserve levels are, and the green is that recommended level. So you have very healthy reserves right now. We're projecting about 4.9 million through the end of this year versus a recommended level of about 2.2 to 2.9 million. And that range has to do with, you're required by DNR to keep an equipment replacement fund. And we'll have to take a closer look at what that looks like once the treatment plant project is all finished and you have a complete list of all the equipment that is subject to that reserve. So you will be drawing down reserves a bit. Again, so that's why I say keep an eye on things going forward with those annual rate increases. But the utility's in good shape financially. And then if you can go to the next one. Yeah, I didn't include this in the memo, but this is always a fun one to look at, especially when you're at this point on the curve. So right now, your current annual wastewater bill for a residential customer is just over $300 for the whole year. So that puts you really on the low end of the range for other communities in the area. With the 3%, you're gonna go up slightly from that point. But as you can see, there are a lot of you're still in very good shape comparatively for how much it costs your residential customers. And then if you can go to the next, this is kind of a combined impact on the total bill for a typical residential customer with those recommended rates for wastewater and stormwater. So what you're seeing there is water is not projected at this point to change unless you qualify for that minimal rate increase next year. So with the combined impact of the water and wastewater, you're looking at about $1.86 per month more that a typical residential customer would pay. And this is a bi-monthly bill, so I broke that down into the monthly and it's about $1.86. And then if you look at the next one, and this is for the, average type of commercial customer here, again, this one is a high-strength commercial customer who gets a separate bill for their sewer volume and loadings rate. But if this customer was being billed for 25 units CCF of sewer use, that's about another $2 impact that they would see on a bi-monthly basis. So that would work out to about $36.52 a month for an example customer with all the proposed rate increases. So that wraps up wastewater, and we're happy to take any questions you might have.
A couple of things I just wanted to add into that. The next phase of this, you heard the term reserves and equipment replacement fund in there. So we carry a balance in our account, as many of us do at home with our finances, to try to keep a little bit of a cushion in that account. That's called the reserves for our utilities. And we're going to take a look with Trilogy at just how much of reserves we need. We haven't really looked at that in the recent past. And Paul and Jeff and myself are going to sit down with these guys and kind of come up with some policies for whether the reserves as I think you'd indicated, $400,000 for the stormwater utility is appropriate, or should we spend that down a bit and carry a smaller reserve or a larger reserve? So that's coming up probably in the first quarter or so of 2024 as part of our more in-depth look at how we manage the utilities. The second thing I want to mention is, even though we've shown 5 years or so of projections, they are only projections. We're just simply looking at 2024 right now. So the stormwater in particular is a very fluid situation. We have to meet the TMDL requirements that have been placed upon us by the DNR, but there are daily more ways to meet that appearing, and all of them have different costs associated with them. So what we're projecting right now is the most expensive, it appears, which is basically building our own infrastructure to treat that. There are a number of other less expensive options out there that we'll be investigating. So we'll come back in 2020, at this time in 2024, as part of the budget process and present another sort of situation, I think, that's updated with the more we've learned in the last year. So any questions for Eric or Christy, or frankly, Jeff and Paul or myself?
Yeah, I have a question with respect to wastewater rates. Do we know, generally speaking, what has allowed Fort Atkinson to remain near the very low end of the rate scale in that bar chart? Like, there are similar communities to us that have significantly higher rates. What has allowed us to stay on the low end?
I would say two things, and perhaps a third that is more my opinion. But the first thing is good management. There's no doubt that our wastewater treatment plant has been managed quite well. And frankly, the majority of those years managed by the fellow that you see there in the front row, Paul Christensen. The second thing is that we have two very solid users of our wastewater treatment plant, being OSI and Jones Dairy Farm. So they contribute a tremendous amount of waste, which we are happy to treat as a part of their very successful businesses. And so those two, kind of foundation members, I guess, of our wastewater utility have been very important for us throughout the history of the utility. Jones Dairy Farm has been here since prior to Fort Atkinson, right? So, and then the third thing I think is a little bit of, and this is a bit of subjectivity, but we are not bound by the rules of the PSC. The PSC, the Public Service Commission, does oversee our water utility. And I understand, the various types of regulations that are in place by the PSC, because they are broad and they have to cover all of Wisconsin. But for utilities that are as well managed as we are, and have been as astute, I would say, financially in managing our own affairs, I think that has a bit of an impact as well in terms of where we sit with respect to our finances.
I do have a question about, or maybe more a comment, I guess, on the stormwater rate. So the headline, no doubt, would be a 25% increase, but that would be really from a rate that has been unchanged for 4 years or 3 years prior to that. So if we had in a perfect world, I guess, if you had been able to go back and smooth that out and each year a 5 or 6% increase or so to get to the current rate today, most people probably wouldn't even notice that.
That's true. We are looking at a slightly, even if we had raised rates sort of incrementally on an annual basis, which is, I think, something that we need to take a good look at answering why we don't do that. So we don't run into these situations where 4 years later with no rate increases, we put a big one in there. But regardless, even in this situation, I think if we had done incremental rate increases, we would have been at this point looking at a slightly higher increase. And that's really because of this TMDL. It's a bit of a moving target. The DNR has on the one hand very graciously said, make all of these improvements to your stormwater because we need to get water cleaner going into the Rock River and the Bark River. And I agree. I think all the communities agree we can do better, and we have been doing better. But on the other hand, they said, there's no timeline for that. Just tell us what you need to do, but we're not going to tell you that you have to have it done by a certain, deadline. And that creates a little challenge, right? How do you plan for that within your rates? We want to avoid borrowing. That adds 10 to 20% to every project, right? If we have to borrow. So if we can build up reserves and do some of these things, that's really important and frankly, financially advantageous to us. So yeah, I would say that of the three utilities is still a bit of a moving target, and hopefully you guys understand when I say we'll come back in 25 with more knowledge on how we're going to accomplish that and what those rates are going to look like.
Yeah, I hope I didn't mean to suggest that we had sort of dropped the ball and not having sort of smaller
No, not at all.
incremental increases
Not at
along the
all.
way. Because when you look at it, we've benefited from having no increase for 21, 2, and 3. And then with the projection in 24, it still works out to like a little over $1 a month. So the percentage may sound like, oh my gosh,
Right.
but the actual dollar amount is, it seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, Christy and Eric, Paul and Jeff. Thanks for stepping in, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Yep, thank you. Have a good night.
Next on our agenda is number 7, resolution and ordinances. First up is review and possible action relating to a resolution adopting the 2024 stormwater utility rate. Engineer Sully, you are listed as.
Yeah, so this is what we just talked about, right? We're going to look at increasing our stormwater utility rates 25%. I wish I had that figure up there because as Councilman Lesko here indicated, 25% sounds really big. But with respect to residential customers, it's I think it was $9 a year, something like that, to the residential customer. Commercial customers will see an increase of that $9 per 3,000 feet of impervious surface that they have. So those with big parking lots and things like that will see an attendant increase to their stormwater bill as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have related to that resolution.
And I think, we talk about stormwater a lot. I think sometimes more if our average resident understands why stormwater management is important and what that does, because I think a lot of people think that what goes down the drain in their street goes to like some kind of treatment facility and it doesn't, right?
Correct. Yeah, you couldn't be more right. Many folks that I have this conversation all the time, folks throwing a can down the storm sewer thinking, oh, it'll get picked up at the wastewater treatment plant. It's sort of a, ready-made garbage can. So we do a pretty good job, I think, of trying to educate folks. Our Sarah Wyatt, our communications person, is just phenomenal at putting out various pieces of information on Facebook and social media, as well as our website on that. So the education is happening, but I do agree we've got a long way to go for sure.
Yeah, I know the efforts have been there for sure, but I think it's something we talk a lot about as a concept, but sometimes the nuts and bolts, I think sometimes get overlooked, but I do think that it's good that we're adopting this strategy to try to be more proactive about, long-term building up that reserve fund you talked about. And then also like, Councilman Lesko talked about trying to moderate those increases over time. So it's a little bit more level. So makes sense. I'll move to approve the resolution adopting the 2024 stormwater utility rate.
Second.
Here we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up is review and possible action relating to a resolution adopting the 2024 wastewater utility rates.
Yeah, so again, this is 3% increase, and this is 3% for residential users that see both a fixed and variable charge, as well as our high strength users. That would be like the Jones Dairy Farm and OSI folks. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions related to that. I think Trilogy did a pretty good job of laying that situation out.
I move to approve the resolution adopting the 2024 wastewater utility rates. Second.
Good motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next up is review and possible action relating to a resolution adopting the 2024 annual budget and setting the property tax levy for the city of Fort Atkinson, Jefferson County, Wisconsin. City Manager Houseman.
Thank you. I do have a short presentation relating to. I'm sorry, I do have a short presentation relating to the budget here. Oops, I have to have the right mouse. Okay, so changes from the draft budget that was presented on the 7th of November. We have received certified levies from all of the taxing jurisdictions. We've also received the school levy tax credit from the Department of Revenue. All of the charts and tables outlining the mill rates are complete and in section C. Our final TID increment revenue is in section O. And then there are 3 resolutions that staff is recommending approval of tonight. And those are the next 3 items on the agenda, including adopting the 2024 budget and setting the property tax levy, confirming the total levy and determining the mill rate, and that does not include the school levy tax credit, and then adopting the 2024 schedule of fees. So just to take us back a minute, this is the budget summary as we've looked at a couple times. I just want to point out that our total levy increase is just $105,000 from the previous year for a 1.14% increase. This has not changed since the proposed budget or the draft budget document was presented at the public hearing on the 7th. Couple more pieces of information we have now relating to the mill rate. You can see that the as we talked about, due to the interim market update, our assessed values increase, and when that happens, the mill rate decreases and taxes generally remain about the same. So that interim market update increased the average assessed average single family dwelling in the city, increased that around 48%, which then in turn decreases that mill rate. So 2023 mill rate for the city only is $7.05 per $1,000 of assessed value. The chart, the orange chart on the right there, that is the total mill rate per $1,000 of assessed value over time, 2013 through 2023. You can see that does include the school levy tax credit, and that went from $28.52 per $1,000 of assessed value in 2022 to $18.89 per $1,000 of assessed value in 2023. So then I have broken this down by taxing jurisdiction. So you can see the orange is Jefferson County. The yellow on that table is the Technical College, Madison Area Technical College District. The city of Fort Atkinson is in green and the school district is in blue. So this does not include the school levy tax credit, as that is taken off the top off the entire mill rate. So it doesn't quite lend itself to showing the individual mill rates for the taxing jurisdictions. So as I mentioned on the slide, the percentage decrease in mill rates from 2022 to 2023 is substantial across the board. And that is mainly due to the aggregate, the increase in aggregate assessed value of all the property within the city. However, I will note that Jefferson County, the Fort Atkinson School District, and MATC all had slight decreases in their requested funding for the next year. Okay. So this chart shows the 2023 mill rate as a percentage by taxing jurisdiction. You can see the city is at about 33.85%. And then I also threw this table together just to show you that change from 22 to 23. So you can see Jefferson County, their percentage of the overall tax bill decreased slightly. MATC's increased slightly. The cities increased about 1.4%, and the school districts decreased about 1.27%. I also created this chart, which shows more the impact of tax increment districts. So I think this is worth noting that there are, when determining mill rate and when determining the property tax bills, there's a lot of formulas and there's a lot of spreadsheets that we put together. And one of those is our TID worksheet, which, takes the amount that's requested by each taxing jurisdiction, and it runs it through a formula, and then they actually levy an amount, including what their piece of the tax increment districts would be. So this chart just shows the overall property tax distribution and that percentage that goes to our tax increment districts for projects within those TIDs. So it's about 6% of the overall taxes that go to the TIDs. So over the next few years, some of those TIDs will close, and that piece of the pie will get smaller, which means that there will be more property taxes distributed to the other taxing jurisdictions. So this is our 2022 and 2023 estimated city tax bill comparison. You've seen this table before. I just want to, this is just the city's portion. And as I've mentioned in previous presentations, I kind of made two little couplets here for each. We've got the value year and then the assessed property value in 2022, and then increase of 48% in 2023 to show the city's portion of the property tax bill in 2022 would have been about 1486. And then with the new mill rate, you might think, oh my gosh, we're going to save lots and lots of money. But that's not exactly how it works because the assessed values went up. So the city's portion for a property valued at $222,000 in 2023 would be about $1,565, which is an increase of about $89 per for the total year. And then I broke it down by month as well. And so we have a 2022 value at 275, which 48% increase is 407, and a 2022 value of 350, which 48% increase is 518. And again, that's just the average increase. That's not actual data at this point. But the good news is when we look at the total tax bill comparison at those various assessed values, and include the school levy tax credit, it does equate to a slight decrease in the total tax bill for 2023. So if all of these estimates and items are correct, the average property tax payer for a residential for a single family dwelling would likely decrease in these amounts depending on the value. Okay, and then I just wanted to talk a little bit about the information on the tax bill. And just mention, and the goal of this slide is simply to connect the information that we talk about during the budget process with the actual tax bill. And I know no one has a tax bill in front of them right now. They have not been created yet, so they have not been distributed yet. But items included on the tax bill are, you have your assessed value, you have that average assessment ratio, which we've talked about a lot in the past. It was 74%, now it's 97.5%. The total payment due, the language that they use on the tax bill isn't exactly the same language we use. That net assessed value rate is that total mill rate that we talk about here. All of the approved referenda are on that tax bill, and then your net taxes in 22 and your net taxes in 23, as well as the state aids to the taxing jurisdictions. Items not included on the tax bill, the prior year assessed value of a property. And that is something that Clerk Eber and I have talked about a number of times, that would be a great piece of information to be on the tax bill. The mill rates for each taxing jurisdiction and those changes, that would be great information on the tax bill. And the total levy from each taxing jurisdiction and the change, including, and then also dollar amount or percentage allocated to TIDS, and the dollar amount or percentage allocated to the private school voucher program. Those are all great pieces of information for a property taxpayer, but they are not included on the tax bill. And that tax bill is mailed by the city, but the form of the bill and the information provided is determined by state statute. So we do not have control over changing any of those things. But most of that all that information is known by the various taxing jurisdictions. So if residents or council members have questions about specific things, they can certainly ask. All the information relevant to the city's tax bill obviously was provided tonight and in previous presentations, budget presentations. So again, just have some recommended actions. The next 3 items on the agenda have to do with adopting the budget, confirming the tax levy, and then the adoption of the 2024 schedule of fees. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
So now this year's tax bill going out is based off of the assessment that we just had finished.
Correct.
So now it's like I did an addition on my place this year. I just got the nice little slip from the assessor that he wants to come reassess. That goes on next year's tax bill, correct?
Yes, the value, there has to be a point in time where the value is determined. So
Okay.
that is 1/1/23 for the 2023 tax bill. So that will be 1/1/24. Your value will be determined as of 1/1/24, and that will be used to calculate your 2024 tax bill that you receive in December of 24.
Okay, just clarifying for other people, so.
Yep, thank you.
A lot of good information. I don't have a big takeaway. I feel like we've had a very good budget workshop and budget presentation here, and I just appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into this. I do think over the last couple of years, the presentation of the budget has become more transparent and a little more easy to understand, and I just personally really appreciate that. I know a lot of our residents do as well.
Any other? No? I'd move to approve the resolution adopting the 2024 annual budget and setting property tax levy for the city of Fort Atkinson.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up is review and possible action relating to a resolution confirming the total levy for taxing jurisdictions in the city of Fort Atkinson and determining the mill rate. Manager Houseman.
I don't have anything additionally to present. You have the resolution is in your packet. And I guess I can say the total 2023 general purpose tax levy is $29,904,345.52. And that does represent an overall decrease of $864,000 from 2022.
What was the total mill rate itself?
Let's see, I believe that was $18.89 per $1,000 of assessed value, but you know, that's in one of these resolutions as well.
On page 55 of the packet, it says tax rate per 1,000, the total is $20.84.
That does not include the school levy
Got it.
tax credit,
Got it.
which was $1.95 per thousand.
Okay.
So that net assessed value rate is, I think, what they call it on the tax bill. That does reflect the school levy tax credit. So that number on the tax bill will be $18.89.
I move to approve the resolution confirming the total levy for taxing jurisdictions in the city of Fort Atkinson and determining the mill rate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up is review and possible action relating to a resolution establishing the 2024 schedule of fees for the city of Fort Atkinson, Jefferson County.
So the resolution before you tonight just has the 2024 fee amounts. We did see this in a previous iteration of the budget that had the 2023 amounts and the 2024 amounts. The Finance Committee also reviewed this in September, as well as we reviewed it in the budget workshop in October. So while I don't have there were only a handful that changed, including the and I don't have them off at the top of my head, so I apologize for that. But if anybody does have questions on specific, I can pull up the previous document and give you specifics. This does include the park impact fees that the council adopted at the last meeting in the November, the first meeting in November, excuse me.
I move to approve the resolution establishing the 2024 schedule of fees for the city of Fort Atkinson.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda is the first reading of an ordinance annexing the territory addressed N2696 Banker Road to the city of Fort Atkinson. City Engineer Selly.
Yeah, thank you. This is a parcel. There's a map in your packet, but it's at the kind of the corner of Campus Drive and Banker Road. This is a residential parcel. The parcel is coming into the city and hooking up to city water and sewer. You'll note that there was a deferred assessment on this parcel in the amount of about $22,000 that we have come to an agreement with the landowners on terms for repayment as part of the annexation agreement that I think was also included within your packet. This is an ordinance, so it does move through 3 readings. We will have the first one this evening and likely will request, assuming no public comment, that at the second reading we forego or suspend the rules and move this ahead. The property is currently for sale, so there is a bit of a timing issue associated with this that I think we can accommodate the applicants. The Planning Commission took a look at this as well at their meeting last Tuesday and had no concerns and moved it on to City Council with their approval.
Andy, is the deferred assessment related to utilities?
It is. So I don't recall the year, but let's say late 90s, there was the installation of water and sewer in Banker Road. And all of those properties that are located within the town had a deferred assessment placed on them for the value of those services. Those properties that were in the city at the time actually were assessed that, and they paid that amount of money for the upgrade of water and sewer, as well as the road that obviously increased the value of their property.
But ultimately, if I understood correctly in the packet, we're only we're kind of giving them a break and we're only charging half of the total deferred assessment.
No, we're charging the entire assessment. It's just simply we're allowing for more mitigated payments. I think there were a
Okay.
couple of options in there, and those two options were based upon when and if the sale of the home moves forward.
Got it.
I move to direct the city manager to prepare this ordinance for a second reading at the December 5th, 2023 city council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions?
Just had one question. Is it just because they have to be annexing in because of it, or just because they wanted to annex in to hook to the city?
Yeah, this came about, the septic system failed. So they purchased the house, unknowing or not knowing, this condition of the septic system. The inspection indicated that it had failed. They went to the county to get a permit to put a new septic in, and the county informed them that because there is public sewer available in front of the property, that they're required to hook up to the public sewer. So the hookup to the public sewer and public water, also requires, by our rules, the annexation into the city, so.
Okay.
We had a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is report of officers, boards, and committees. We have the city manager's report.
Thank you. The recruitment for the fire and EMS chief position continues to move forward. The Police and Fire Commission, community leaders, members of the city's management team, and several fire EMS professionals held panel interviews with the semifinalists on November 17th. The Police and Fire Commission will meet on November 29th to consider next steps in the process. I attended a Jefferson County Economic Development Consortium Thrive ED education session on November 16th relating to resources for Wisconsin manufacturers. I learned a lot and hope to be working with Deb Reinbold of JCEDC and the JCEDC staff to ensure that Fort Atkinson's manufacturers know about and have access to those resources. I wanted to thank, special thank you to Mabel Schumacher, who once again brought lunch in for the city's public works, parks, and municipal building employees on November 16th. Every year, Mabel provides lunch and conversation in what staff has deemed Mabel Fest. So it was a nice event. The Friends of the Library are having a silent auction between November 22nd and December 6th. Stop by the library to see the silent themed baskets. The Friends support the library by providing explorer passes, financial support for events, and volunteers. This is also a good time to renew or start a Friends of the Library membership. The city has hired Nash Christian as the new Parks and Recreation Administrative Assistant and Program Coordinator. He's worked part-time for the department in many capacities over the last 7 years, and we're very excited to have him join our team full-time. Utility work and reconstruction on Florence and Wilcox Streets are complete with only some terrace restoration to finish. The emergency water main work on Nelson Street authorized by the city council at the last meeting is also complete with the temporary asphalt to be laid tomorrow. The municipal building will be closed this Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving. And lastly, on Monday, November 27th, it is Snowplow Driver Appreciation Day. Hopefully we won't see any snowplow drivers on the road that day. But on the cusp of the season, I'd like to express my appreciation to our staff that plows snow, which allows our public safety staff to respond to emergencies and the rest of us just to continue with our daily lives. So thank you to those folks. And that's all I have tonight.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is unfinished business, which we have none. Item number 10, new business. First item is review and possible action to authorize the city manager to execute the 2024 joint powers agreement with Jefferson County for the county 911 emergency system.
Thank you. So this agreement states that if an emergency services vehicle is dispatched in response to a 911 call for service through the county's dispatch system, that the vehicle and its personnel will render aid to the persons needing such aid, regardless of whether the vehicle is operating inside or outside of the vehicle's normal jurisdictional boundaries. So this joint powers agreement allows the city to respond outside of the city and other folks to respond inside the city. It is an annual agreement with the county and staff does recommend approval.
I'll move to authorize the city manager to execute the 2024 joint powers agreements with with Jefferson County for the county 911 emergency system.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda is review and possible action relating to the original alcohol beverage license application for Wyreal LLC DBA doing business as Fat Boys for use at 219 South Main Street for the licensing period of November 30th, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. Clerk Hebert.
Thank you. So as stated, this is the location of 219 South Main Street. It's currently operated as Fat Boys Inc. with agent and owner of John Dawson. Mr. Dawson has been looking to sell his business, and he has got a buyer who has come forward. It is two couples, and it's We Real LLC. I know it's a hard one. We Real LLC, they'll be doing business as Fat Boys. They will retain the name, and it will be at the same location. We Real LLC has submitted all appropriate documentation. The original alcohol beverage license application was submitted. Today, they did provide the Wisconsin seller's permit number, which took a few weeks to process. So all those required material were provided. Background checks were successful. Upon approval, the prorated license fee would be paid, and then also the publication fee. The sale is scheduled for November 30th. As this is a Class B intoxicating liquor and Class B fermented malt beverage license, there are no licenses available. We are full to our quota. Therefore, for this transaction, Mr. Dawson, Fat Boys Inc. would surrender his license contingent on the approval for We Real LLC doing business as Fat Boys. Such letter has been provided by Mr. Dawson saying he would surrender upon approval. Should the transaction not occur on November 30th, the license would be retained by Mr. Dawson, and he may continue to operate the business at that location. Again, should it not go through, there's probably some other discussions that would take place between the seller and the buyer. But the license would be retained by Mr. Dawson. Again, this would be effective November 30th through June 30th, as our alcohol licensing period runs July 1st through June 30th. The sale not taking place on the 30th. The day of the 30th, when the transaction occurs, following the sale, Mr. Dawson will surrender his license to me, and then I will provide the new license to We Real LLC. We'd recommend approval. I'd happy to answer any questions. The only contingency would just be the payment for monies owed. If the council were to include the motion of the seller's permit, you certainly can. However, I do have that number. Happy to answer any questions.
I move to approve the original alcohol beverage license application for the licensing period of November 30th, 2023 to June 30th, 2024 for We're Real doing business as Fat Boys for use at 219 South Main Street, subject to all monies owed or paid prior to license issuance by the clerk.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those approved signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up is review and possible action to authorize the city manager to enter into a 5-year contract with Running Inc. for shared ride taxi service from 2024 to 2028. Engineer Selly.
Yeah, thank you. The packet, I think, included some background information on both the status of the taxi here in 23 and then moving forward in 24. We put forward a request for proposals for 8,000 hours of taxi service in 2024. We received one proposal from Brown Cab, which has been the consistent response that we get with one proposal for several years, I think maybe even decades. To their credit, they came in at the same rate that we renegotiated last year in 2023. I'm sorry that we renegotiated this year, but in 2022. $36.73 an hour for those 8,000 hours of service. We've gone through a process whereby a small group of us met and evaluated their proposal. submitted a recommendation to the Transportation and Traffic Review Committee, who also felt the same and felt good moving this to the city council with their recommendation for entering into a contract with Brown Cab. You will note that with the hours and the hourly rates that was submitted, we are still projecting about a $17,000 deficit for next year. With the ridership projections that we have. So that is highly variable, but it does represent a shift that we've seen the last in 23 and will continue in 24 with reduced ridership and the city having to actually pay out of our budget funds for the taxi to make up that difference. So in years past, we've been able to manage that with the fare revenue being enough to take care of the city's portion of the contract obligation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Required by law that the city provide a transportation service like this?
It is not. It is something, I don't know how long we've had it, but it's been around for quite a while, and there is a pretty significant population that relies on that transportation. The thought has crossed my mind, though, Councilman Jekyll. It is a lot of work, mostly procedural to move through the contracts and management of these things.
Councilmember Jekyll, your microphone is not on.
Sorry. But yeah, I feel like it just, this last couple of years just has really taken a downturn on ridership.
Yeah.
And then with the implementation of Uber and Lyfts and all that.
I will say there is, well, I wouldn't call it hope, but there is some improvement that we have seen in the third quarter going into the fourth quarter of this year with ridership. It's very small, but it is moving in the right direction. So we'll see if we're just simply in a slow recovery period.
No, Andy, I appreciate the work that goes into negotiating this and managing it from the city's end. I do think it's important that we, this is effectively our only form of public transportation in Fort Atkinson. And I've said before that I feel that many of the people that use this service, they're not going to be the kind of people who come to a council meeting and advocate for it. They're not going to contact one of us to give us their opinion. But I think it's still important that we maintain this service for them. I do occasionally still hear anecdotes though about long wait times for rides and things like that. Do you have any sense right now of where Brown Cab is in terms of staffing and addressing some of those service shortfalls?
I think they're moving out of the staffing issues. So previously, when we had 15,900 hours required of the contract, that had, I think, at the peak 4 to 5 taxis on the road at one time. Peak would be in the morning and evening hours, generally speaking. They were having a difficult time getting drivers for those taxis at that time. When we reduced down to 9,000 hours here in 23, the difficulty, I think they've had at most 3 on the road at peak times. And so they've been able to continue finding appropriate drivers for those cabs. And I do want to mention, I should say as a bit tongue in cheek with Councilman Jekyll regarding the amount of work to run the cab on the city side of things. It does serve some of the most vulnerable parts of our residents and population. So certainly is a necessity for many of our residents who, as you said, don't show up to meetings and bend our ear about how often they use the cab.
Yeah.
But I will say the wait times I don't think are going to improve. The reduction in hours that we have down to 8,000 hours puts only 2 cabs on the road at peak times. So it will be, unfortunately, the service will be available, but the timeliness may be taking a bit of a hit.
Got it. Appreciate that.
For like decreased ridership over the past couple of years, is there any indication of what may be causing it? Is it a demographic shift? Is it the fact that technological shifts where now you can do doctor's visits, via Zoom or Amazon, you can have anything in the world delivered to your front door without having to leave your, put on any clothes and leave your house. So,
Yeah, I suspect, some of that has played a role. The numbers that I can concretely say have been affected were our agency rides. So the 3 managed care organizations that we have in the city that provide services for their residents, one of those services is transportation. And traditionally, that service was provided by that managed care organization buying a suite of coupons, say 100 coupons in a month, and providing those to their residents for use whenever they needed to ride the taxi. One of those, the largest organization we have, implemented a financial policy that no longer allowed them to buy rides in advance, and they went in a different direction for their rides. That represented about a $90,000, I think it was $90,000 or $100,000 loss of revenue. And our revenue is roughly around the $200,000 mark in a year. So that was a huge hit for us that we have not seen recover. Then the other type of ridership would be what I would term normal ridership or non-agency fares. And that is made up of children, adults, seniors. That ridership has been slowly returning, but it certainly didn't jump back after COVID. So those are the 2 numbers that have greatly affected us with respect to the financials of the taxi.
And so while this action would be to authorize a 5-year contract, it's really just the first 2 years that are part of it. The last 3 are options.
Correct. Thanks for bringing that up. This is a 5-year, but as you mentioned, a 2-year required option, and then the 3 years following. Should we run into additional financial headwinds with the taxi, we do have the ability to put it back out to bid, or as we saw this year in 23, we can renegotiate. That process, frankly, went fairly smoothly for it being a bit unorthodox. So.
I move to authorize the city manager to enter into a 5-year contract with Running Incorporated for a shared ride taxi service from 2024 to 2028.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up is review and possible action relating to a certified survey map for the Dollar Tree project to be located at 1111 Madison Avenue.
Me again.
Sal?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Jed's child's birthday was this evening, so I nicely said, maybe you should go hang out with your child tonight. So anyway, the certified survey map, we heard some public comment regarding this project earlier. The site plan did come before Planning Commission last Tuesday at their meeting and was approved. The certified survey map came before Planning Commission as well and was approved, moving on to City Council. The requirements that were in that certified survey map were twofold. One was to provide the cross-access agreements that would be between the Dollar Tree and the property owner to the west, which is currently Blackhawk Fitness. And then the second requirement was to show the cross-access agreement, the existing easement that is on the parcel for the benefit of the Clout property, which is kind of to the south east of the current spot. I will note that we have been in contact both with Mr. Weston and Mrs. Weston, as well as the developer Garrett Bader, with respect to some of the ancillary issues related to this site. I think we're moving towards some resolution on some of those things related more to screening and things like that, but we are not at a point where we have resolved any of those yet. I do, to a certain extent, agree with Mr. Weston, but with respect to the facade, but it did meet our zoning code requirements, and we have, in adopting our new zoning code that occurred in 2020, I believe it was, we did have a public forum that included both council, planning commission, and members of the public, where we did discuss architectural standards for this very reason. And that body at that time decided that the improvements that we made went far enough, which were better than what we had in our previous zoning code. And so we can ask certainly more of developers, but we really evaluate things based upon our zoning code. And so I think both points in this situation are very much well taken, and And I think we're doing our best to kind of navigate both sides of this and provide a little bit of collaboration, we'll say, within the neighborhood that's there. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions related to the certified survey map.
Do we know why Dollar Tree selected this site in Fort Atkinson as a place to develop, or?
I really can't surmise that. We do have Garrett Bader is on the Zoom if we wanted to ask of that, but I suspect the zoning obviously played a role in just simply allowing that type of use of the property. And beyond that, I think it would be more specific to Mr. Bader if we wanted to ask him of that. Garrett, I don't know if you're on the line and happen to hear that or not, but the question was, what was driving the selection of this location off of Madison Avenue for your development?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. When developments like this are proposed, the answers to those questions are pretty simple. Traffic, visibility, proximity to other like users, quite simply, where are the customers, how can they find us, and where can we be convenient to them? This site being on a heavily traveled street near the retail corridor on the western end and yet close to downtown, a nice connective road, were all very appealing. At that point, then looking for available sites as we did, and this one listed for sale, spoke with the owners and reached agreement on a proposed acquisition.
Thank you.
Couple things that occurred to me. I know we're voting on a CSM tonight, and it meets the requirements that Plan Commission approved. That lot, from what I recall, has been listed for sale for an awfully long time. And we often hear from residents about how they want more retail in Fort Atkinson. So I think this is going to meet a desired need in the community. I did have the chance earlier today to go back and look at the Plan Commission packet. I didn't think the renderings looked bad. Does it look like a palace? No, but I thought it looked reasonably good, and I thought kind of matches some of the aesthetics of some of the other commercial businesses further down Madison Avenue. So that's just my opinion on those issues.
I kind of echo the same thing, you know, got the Plan Commission packet pulled up right in front of me, and going to Google Maps, you know, it highly mimics the O'Reilly's building for aesthetics. I mean, just 15 years newer. So, and you know, same thing. I live right in that neighborhood, and you know, my wife is excited to see a Dollar Tree within walking distance. So.
I think I've served on the Plan Commission for 4 years, maybe in my time, and it's one of the most challenging committees to serve on. But one thing I was always grateful for was that we had solid zoning codes to fall back on, and then the expertise of staff to help guide us in the right direction and interpret them if proposals meet the requirements. And again, we just updated, as you mentioned, in 2020, the last time the zoning code was updated. If they meet those requirements, it's only logical to move forward. I don't know how, on what basis we would deny it if it met all of the qualifications.
Yeah, I'd agree. We can ask, right? There certainly is, and we've done that with Mr. Bader, asked for some adjustments and things like that. But at the end of the day, the code is what the code is, and Mr. Bader can be accommodating as much as he would like. But at some point, when you know the code is being met, and we continue asking for more beyond that, they can refuse. I also want to say, you know, I don't think that the assessment of Mr. and Mrs. Weston was extravagant either. I think, you know, their profession, frankly, gives them an eye that is superior to most of ours in this situation. And it would have been, you know, their input on this would have been welcome. In fact, we have many more planning commissions meetings to come. So I would encourage the Westons to check out those agendas ahead of time as they're posted, because that expertise is certainly welcome.
I'll move to approve the 2-lot certified survey map for the property located at 1111 Madison Avenue, subject to the inclusion of the cross access and parking easements between lots 1 and 2 and the existing access easement on lot 2 that provides access to the parcel to the east.
Second.
Here we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is miscellaneous. We have none. Item number 12, claims, appropriations, and contract payments. Clerk Everett.
Happy to answer any questions.
I'll move to approve the list of verified claims presented by the Director of Finance and to authorize payment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Jekyll,
Aye.
Councilman Lesko Hair.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Schultz.
Aye.
Motion.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.